Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Brian Nadeau Shot by Design Void. First off, though, I want to thank very much my Patreon patrons who make it possible for me to see a, $350 knife show up on the market. Like, yeah, I got to get one of those. It's a wonderful joy. They make the channel possible, and I appreciate their support every damn day of the week. Next thing, let's do a size comparison real quick. This guy is actually reasonably sized for a Brian Nadeau, right? Here it is against the Spyderco Delica. Here it is against the Ontario Rat number 2. And here it is against the Spyderco PM2. So we can see here that size-wise, this is quite reasonable. And in fact, we've got a cutting edge about the length of the PM2 there. But the overall, dimensions of it, the size of it in the pocket, is actually a little bit smaller than the Delica. So that's actually pretty impressive. That's the joys of not having a finger choil, right? But at another level, it's a very compact little piece. Then finally, a quick note. This is not a custom shot by design. This is one of Brian's series of knives that he's done in collaboration with Rayot Knives overseas. And I mean collaboration maybe a little bit more than usual, because Brian has done a lot of things to this that make this not the conventional Rayot. It's using the Nadeau detent system, where it's a ramp in there rather than a ball. Really, this is one of the better knives I think that Rayot has made, generally speaking, and it happens to be made overseas. But there is going to be an XL version of this, which is, a much larger, as you might expect the XL version to be, right? But nonetheless, that'll be custom, but these guys are a production knife that's being done with Rayot there. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of the Shot by Design Void right here. On the good side. Start with, this has a bunch of different options. When you first had the option to pre-order these guys, and also in addition, some dealers got them, you have a bunch of different options. I think maybe just Blade HQ, but I'm not sure. Anyways, you can get a PVD black handle, etc. You could get carbon fiber inlays, as I've done there. There's one where you had a cutout there. There were a bunch of different options for you. Damascene steel blades, different color anodizations. This was actually, there was a surprising variety, and that's something I always do appreciate, even though I'm sure it adds some complexity to the process. But that was nice. Next thing, the construction on this guy is good to go. In fact, the construction on this guy is very, very good. This feels like a custom knife in its construction. Honestly, it is really, really nice. I mean, all the machining on this guy is very nice, very smooth. You can see here the nice little bumps up all around things here. The clip on this guy is a beautifully made spring clip that happens to be milled. You can see here the back there. Those are actually two pieces. If I really zoom it in, you can see the line. Yeah, that's nice. The inlay work here is just beautifully done. Overall, I am very, very impressed with the make on this. This was really well done. This is something that Rayot and Brian should be very, very proud of in the build quality they'll make. Next thing, the clip on this guy is excellent. This is, like I said, it feels in the pocket every bit like a spring clip, and in some ways it looks a lot like one, but if you look at it carefully, it is a milled clip, 100%. Thing is, it's got great spring-a-tude. It works great. This is just a really, really excellent clip, and ergonomically speaking, actually, it's pretty damn good too. So I'm really a fan of this clip. This was well done. Next thing, disassembly on this is super easy. You take out this screw, you take out this screw. Boom. Case closed, problem solved. I am definitely a big fan of that. Makes things very, very easy to take apart. Next thing, this has a construction, the carbon fiber inlay one specifically, it is a frame lock, but it has this overlay, the carbon fiber on top of the lock bar in large parts, and that's actually a very nice thing. It sort of has the advantages like a conventional bolster lock, where the part of the lock bar is covered up by the carbon fiber. In this case, what that means is that as you're flipping this guy, your finger is practically never going to be resting on the lock bar itself, so that means your detent is just going to be more consistent. You're not going to be fighting against your finger resting against the lock bar as you're using this guy, and frankly, the inlay work is great too, so I'm definitely glad I went with the inlay model on this guy. Next thing, this has lots of little detail work here. I mean, you can see the little rises and falls around the lock bar insert screw. You can see they've hidden the lock bar cutout underneath the inlay here. The little, the pocketing basically around the pocket clip, which give it is necessary to keep the clip in place, but it is damn near perfect. The swedge on this guy, there is so much little detail on this knife that I really very much appreciate. You can tell that Brian put a lot of time and effort into thinking about this knife, and it absolutely 100% shows. Even this area right here, for your thumb to land into with this jimping up there, Yeah, this was thought out very, very well. That's good. And even the logo, which is no longer on the flipper tab because the flipper tab is a reasonable size now. I'm sorry, Brian. But nonetheless, it looks great in that little position there, so that's good. Speaking of, speaking of nothing, but the next thing I want to talk about is the blade, which is freaking good. This is a big old chunk of M390, steel M390 being probably one of the best pocket knife steels in the world, if not the best at the moment. It is a very, very nice thing, and the grind on it is quite good. They have thinned this out pretty damn substantially. It is very, very, very nice, and it cuts quite nicely as well. This is a grind that I love seeing out of Rayot, and it's great to see them up in their game in that way. And also, frankly, the swedge on it and the hole in it are really, really good. This is just beautifully made overall, complete with these nice grind lines in there. Yeah, that's solid. Then finally, we get to the price point. If you pre-ordered it, you could, and paid full price, you got it for $300. Otherwise, $350 seems to be the price on this guy. Yeah, you can flick it like that too. That is a really solid price. Honestly, there is not that much out there right now for $350 that is excelling this. Actually, I can't really think of anything in terms of build quality. This feels every bit like a high-end custom piece. This feels every bit like, people are paying $800 for this from freaking Russia right now. It's really, really good. They have done great work here. The price on this guy is not cheap, but it feels very, very good. This feels like a value. So to me, at least, all that is the good is that it's got a really nice price, a nice blade, good detail work. I love a good bolster lock, although this isn't a bolster lock. It sure kind of acts like one. It's got very simple disassembly, a great clip, great construction, bunch of different options. On the great side, the opening methods on this guy make it really easy. I mean, to start with, it's got a great detent. The Nadeau detent, like I said, is not actually a detent ball, it's a detent nub. You can kind of probably see that inside of there. Yeah, you can see that little nub there, and what that means is that it's very, very clicky to close, and very clicky to open. This has a detent that is really unlike a lot of other detents out there in the world. Frankly, it's kind of his thing, right? But it results in an action that is absolutely 100% not coming open. This is not a knife that has any, but the detent actually feels a little bit softer. You don't need to use quite as much force to get it there. And additionally, it is so easy to close because the detent has an integral ramp to it. So you don't need a detent ball ramp. You just, the detent is a freaking ramp, and that's great. Definitely a big fan of that. Coupled with the fact that we've now got this opening hole, which is very easy to use, and I'd say maybe a quarter of the time I pulled this out, I ended up using the hole instead. But it's really nice in that way, and he's also using a flipper tab that is not redonkulous. If this had been a prior model Brian Nadeau knife, maybe the flipper tab would be out to, someplace in this vicinity. Sorry, that's a joke. They were much larger in, for instance, the Evo Typhoon, etc., which, is fine if you need to attack somebody with the flipper tab of your knife, and that's your style, but not necessarily great for carrying. It is a prototypical pocket pecker, as we talked about on the Knife Nuts podcast episode where I joined in. I'm sorry, not talked about, as I was ganged up on about, but, hey, it's okay. But the fact that he has reduced that makes this knife just not only a little bit more of a joy to carry, but also I think it works really well in the opening. That's so the opening on this guy being a super smooth action, and it is a super smooth action, by the way, coupled with the opening hole, this is just an absolute joy to deploy in every damn way. So, to me, that's what's great here. The bad side. One thing I will note is that if you've got bigger hands, this has relatively little finger room here. The overall, I don't usually give this measurement. I should give you the blade measurement, 3.25 inches. But the overall size of this guy, like the grip area of this, is a little under 3.5 inches. For me, with my relatively small hands, I definitely have a 4-finger grip on this, but I've definitely heard from some of my the fans and patrons and whatnot that, for bigger hands, it's not necessarily going to be a great choice. So this is definitely something you'd kind of want to handle before you buy, except you can't because, yeah. Anyways, we'll get there. But there is relatively little finger room in that way, so keep that in mind. Next thing, the clip on this guy is great, but it's also finished weirdly. Every other part of this knife, I mean, it matches the blade well, but every other part of this knife has got this sort of blasted look to it, whereas the clip does not. I kind of wish they'd kept that uniform there, but, not the end of any world. Next thing, I was just, heaping praise on this reasonably sized flipper tab, but I would actually like a little tiny bit of texture on there, a very subtle bit of jimping or something like that. There have been one or two times, especially with like wet hands, where I've slipped off that flipper tab. Not the end of the world, but definitely a little fix for the future. Next thing, this is very much a quality control issue rather than the knife itself, but actually my particular knife had a little tiny, it looked like there was a little tool crash, or maybe somebody accidentally hit it with something, such that there was a little bit of a burr raised up, such that there was a little bit of something raised up at the very bottom of that detent ramp. And so there was kind of a little snag right here. And what that meant is it felt for a second like it needed a detent ramp. And I was, I'd had the knife for about a week or so and was carrying it. It was like, why does this feel like it needs a detent ramp? Then I got this guy out, and then I realized, I bust out the jeweler's loop. I'm looking at the inside there. Oh, there's that issue right there. I took it apart and just hit it with a diamond file for maybe 2 minutes. Was able to get that completely done. Now it's smooth as freaking silk, but that was definitely something that, it was a subtle little issue, but it was definitely something that got a lot better when I removed that. So there you go. Not necessarily a big deal, but it is, a quality control fail, I guess, of a relatively low order. Then finally, and so keep an eye out for that on yours, by the way. If you're having trouble getting the detent ramp back on, or getting the detent back onto the blade, it could be that you've got the same issue there. Then finally, on the bad side, I kind of wish the blade had been done a little bit thinner. I mean, this is not a thin blade right here. This is, maybe 4 millimeters. Yeah, it looks like about 4 millimeter thick stock. I don't know why it needed to be quite so thick as it is. They managed to get it out to a reasonably thin edge, but still, this is a relatively small knife. I think they could have gone a little thinner there. So that's definitely and it makes the knife on the whole a little bit thicker than you might expect. If we put this guy up against the PM2, this guy is thicker in the pocket than the PM2, I think thanks in large part, not only to the contouring of the scales, which is fine, but to the thickness of that blade in the middle there. So I do wish they'd gone a little bit thinner on the blade, and thus on the knife generally speaking. To me, all that is the bad is that I wish it'd been a little thinner. There was that little tiny tool crash at the base of that ramp, but I was able to knock that off in just a couple of seconds there. A couple of minutes. I wouldn't mind a little bit of texturing on the tab. The clip finish, a little bit out of place, and there's relatively little finger room on this if you've got big old meat paws. On the ugly front, the only ugly thing here isn't about the knife, but it's about the availability of the knife. Brian Nadeau's model for these collaborations has been to do mostly prepaid work, or mostly, deposits, where he opens up his books for him, he sells, out in 10 seconds or whatever. And then, 6 months or whatever later, they land. But then the problem is he doesn't really make many more of them available. It's like you get the pre-order stuff, and you have to basically buy on faith there. And then, you get your knife down the road. What I'd kind of like to see happen is, they're great. That's a fun thing and a good way for his fans to interact, but I'd love to see him do much larger batches also going to distributors. Like do a batch for fans and then follow up with a batch for distributors around when they're supposed to hit for the fans. Right now, you're kind of buying on trust, and although at this point in time, I'm going to be honest, I trust him. At this point, he is on my just take my damn money, Brian list. It's not great. And although I was able to clarify with him that it is not a limited edition in the sense that he's going to probably make more of these guys. He's not ruling out the possibility of more of them. In fact, I hope he does that sooner rather than later. It acts like a limited edition, and I'm not a big fan of that. I really wish he had more regular availability of these models because they are so substantially freaking good. So, to me at least, the ugly part is that you can't buy one, at least right now, and I kind of wish that was an option for you. Final conclusion. Look, I love this knife. This is a really, really nice piece. I mean, the Evo Typhoon was my high-end knife of the year last quarter, and that's, last year. I don't know why the heck I'm saying quarter. Anyways, sequel to the gem of the year in a lot of ways. The high-end knife of the year was one of his, and my biggest complaints with it were it was a little bit too big and, not all that EDC friendly for people who like smaller knives. And so he made one that's smaller and more EDC friendly. So, it's going to be freaking good. The thing is, though, I think it's a gem, but it's earned that gem hood in its own way. It's got lots of options, a great clip, a great build, easy disassembly, nice bolsters, inlay, a great blade, a solid price, and a really good action, but with better opening approaches, I think, than he's had before. I mean, it's a little small for some folks. Clip finish is a bit weird. There was that machining issue. It's definitely a thick boy, and availability is kind of a problem that I hope he's able to fix for future runs of these things. But in practice, this is an awesome freaking knife. Brian is working with Rayot here to get these knives that are, frankly, better than most custom knives. You could sit this down at anybody's table at Blade Show. If I were to just show up as a random jackass selling these guys as brand new custom knives, people would be paying thousands of dollars for them. They are really, 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 really freaking good. And these are done just as well as the last batch was. I'm always worried that, when you see somebody hitting it out of the park over and over again, things might slip, but no, these are just as good. But the thing is, not only is it just as good in production, but it's, I think, a design that's going to have a little bit more mass market appeal. With the possibility of that flick, it definitely makes it a little bit more interesting to some. It's got the dialed back pocket pecker, which I think is a bit of a problem, people. Come on. And the size of it is just really nice. This is a relatively small knife in the pocket, even though it has a relatively long blade in terms of sharpened length. So this is a very compact knife. So I really feel like this design is a hit out of the park, completely independently of the build quality of it. In practice, I don't know that this particular knife is going to stick around, but that's because I ordered the Knife Nuts Podcast Edition. Those haven't arrived yet, but I think that's going to be particularly spectacular. It's got a little bit of upgraded Damascus in there. I probably won't do a separate review because it's a limited edition. Anyways, but I do think it's going to be hard for me to avoid having one of these guys in my life. I really, really like this knife. I think it's a great size. It's a great build. It's a great knife overall. So in summary, it's a freaking gem. Stellar little nice, great EDC choice, and it's one that I wish you could just run out and order right now. And it's definitely a design that I hope we're going to see available sooner rather than later. Come on, Brian, get freaking on it. So, anyways, well done. This was really, really good. Keep knocking it out of the park with these collaborations, and I am very, very much impressed and continue to be. I have a Micro Typhoon on order at the moment with him because, like I said, at this point, Brian with these collabs is in my, just take my damn money sort of file of like, you know what, just send me one. You've got my credit card. Because these are just so damn good. So well done. Very, very impressed. And I think we could very easily say that this void here is Mawsome, because Maw was the black hole in Star Wars. Black holes are voids. No. Okay, I did my best. Anyways, hope you found this interesting and have yourselves an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.